Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you're all doing very well on this Friday morning. Well, today is a very special Friday. We call it Good Friday, and there's a variety of reasons why we call it Good Friday. Now, from the Old Testament, we have learned already a lot about who Jesus is, but in the New Testament, we learn about his life and actually his death. And his death happened we celebrate his death on Good Friday. And it might seem a bit odd to celebrate somebody's death, but we will see soon enough why we celebrate Jesus' death and what it did for us. Now we're going to be reading out of the Bible, God's word, God speaking to us. And we will first be looking at Mark chapter 15, verses 21 to 32. Mark chapter 15, verses 21 to 32. We will be reading out of the New International Reader's Version, which can be found on the YouVersion app. Let's listen very carefully, boys and girls. A man named Simon was passing by. He was from Cyrene. He was the father of Alexander and Rufus. Simon was on his way in from the country. The soldiers forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha. The word Golgotha means place of the skull. They gave him wine mixed with spices, but he did not take it. They nailed him to the cross. Then they divided up his clothes. They cast lots to see what each of them would get. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. They wrote out the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified him with 2 rebels against Rome. One was on his right and one was on his left. Those who passed by shouted at Jesus and made fun of him. They shook their heads and said, "So you are going to destroy the temple and build it again in 3 days? Then come down from the cross, save yourself." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law made fun of him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross. When we see that, we will believe." Those who were being crucified with Jesus also made fun of him. Now we will read further, also Mark chapter 15, from verses 33 to 41. Mark 15, verses 33 to 41. At noon, darkness covered the whole land. It lasted 3 hours. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani." This means, my God, why have you deserted me?" And this is from Psalm 22, verse 1. Some of those standing nearby heard Jesus cry out. They said, "Listen, he's calling for Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge with wine vinegar. He put it on a stick. He offered it to Jesus to drink. "Leave him alone," he said. "Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." With a loud cry, Jesus took his last breath. The temple curtain was torn in two from top to bottom. A Roman commander was standing there in front of Jesus. He saw how Jesus died. Then he said, "This man was surely the Son of God." Not very far, some women were watching. Mary Magdalene was among them. Mary, the mother of the younger James and of Joseph, was also there. So was Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed Jesus. They had taken care of his needs. Many other women were also there. They had come up with him to Jerusalem. Now, this is actually quite a sad account of Jesus dying, Jesus being nailed to the cross and dying. How can this be what we celebrate on Good Friday? Well, one thing, we see something quite strange happen. Jesus cries out at some stage, my God, why have you deserted me? Why have you left me?" And the reason why is actually so that we never have to be left by God if we put our trust in Jesus and what he did on the cross. That means we can be friends with God. Now, the other things that Jesus also did for us on the cross are things we actually already learned about. Like, do you remember the Passover lamb? The blood of the Passover lamb that the Israelites had to put on their doorposts so the angel of death would pass by and they would not die before they go to Egypt. Well, Jesus becomes the Passover lamb on the cross. His blood helps so that we don't need to die because of our sin that we're in. Another thing that Jesus does for us on the cross is that he becomes the great high priest. Now, the high priest in the Old Testament, he used to go into the holiest place once a year to make sacrifice for the whole nation and for his own sin. But Jesus was completely without sin because he is God as well. He is fully God, fully man. So he only needs to make one sacrifice for all of us, and once was enough. But Jesus also fulfills the law because he doesn't sin once. So he fulfills the law for us because we could not. And he also is God with us. So that is a lot of reasons why we can be happy and why it is a Good Friday for us. So let's look at a few questions, boys and girls. First question, was Jesus just a man on the cross? Second question, what was Jesus carrying on the cross? Third question, why did Jesus' Father leave him? And then the fourth question, can you remember who Jesus is from what we learned out of the Old Testament? And we just spoke a little bit about what Jesus is and what he is on the cross for us. So think of that. Well, boys and girls, in between eating some Easter eggs and perhaps having an Easter egg hunt, please remember that the real reason why we celebrate Easter is that Jesus came and died for us on a cross, and we can be super thankful for that. Well, enjoy the rest of your days, boys and girls, and I will see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.